If you're looking for a small, family-friendly town that serves Stumptown coffee, today we're talking about the pros and cons of Sherwood, 30 minutes outside of downtown Portland, Oregon.
Then maybe Sherwood could be the town you're looking for. Today we get into the pros and cons of living in Sherwood, Oregon. Let's go. Everybody, I'm Aaron Cullen, a local real estate agent, and this is my wife, Brianna Cullen, and today we're in Sherwood, Oregon. Now, we're just a short 30-minute drive from downtown Portland with no traffic, and what a cool, quaint town this is. You know, it has a bunch of accolades like one of America's friendliest towns, the top 50 list of best small towns to live in,
The third-rated school district in the state.
one of the best school districts.
So we're going to talk about the pros and cons today here in Sherwood. It feels like we're a world away from Portland, and we're going to take you through and see what it's like.
All right, guys, let's get into it. We're in Woodhaven right now, which is one of my favorite neighborhoods. The price point in here, the average is about $600,000 for a 3-bed, 2.5 bath, but it goes up from there to about $800,000 as well if you want a little bit bigger house. And there's also a couple other neighborhoods as well that I can recommend to you. Go ahead and reach out to me. My information's right down there in the description area. One of the other neighborhoods in here that I highly recommend checking out is Sherwood View Estates. And there's also another neighborhood that's more in the countryside where if you want some small acreage, those houses start at about $1 million and go on up. But they're gonna have more of that estate feeling.
Like you might even have your own little tiny vineyard that you could tend to, right?
Absolutely. Or you could have a small barn if you have horses. The possibilities really are endless, or a pond, or just want that big open space.
I think that's such a special experience. I think in another life, I would love to have acreage, a little vineyard to tend to, a gardening plot, and just that much more land for the kids to roam and explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Sherwood has a lot of those properties in the surrounding area. So if that's something that interests you, give me a shout, and I could definitely connect with you about that.
Thank goodness it's shady with these tree-lined streets here in Sherwood.
Yes.
Because it's going to be 100 degrees here today. It's not Sherwood's fault. It's rarely like this.
Yeah, we're in the heat of the summer. They call this the dog days of summer.
That's right. Kind of just makes you want to hang out, lay out at the pool.
Yeah. And you know what? We're getting a nice little cool breeze here under some shady trees. And that's one of the things I love about this neighborhood, Woodhaven, that we're in right now. This development was built in the 90s, but you know what? I'm gonna wait for housing to get more into that. This is the pros and cons of Sherwood, Oregon, right outside of Portland. So let's jump into it. What's our first pro today?
Quality of life here in Sherwood, and really everything that's wrapped into that. So this is small town, easy living at its finest.
Yeah.
Including a lot of access to outdoor recreation, nature. We're here along the Tualatin River Valley. There's trails, there's a river, there's water sports, all of that adds up to your, leisure life here in Sherwood.
Yeah, and speaking of that, let's spin right around here, and there's a trail right there to one of the local little parks here. This is what's so cool about Sherwood and these little neighborhoods is there are a lot of outdoor activities and trails just right there in the neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. And then everything that goes with being in a small town and those amenities. So it's very quiet in this neighborhood.
Yes.
Sidewalks, easy place for kids to be out on their bikes. On our drive over here, we passed a neighborhood park with a bunch of families and kids in a sandbox with a cover over it and toys in the sandbox, a splash pad.
Yep. Yeah, it was Woodhaven Park. and I have never seen so many toy trucks in a sandbox.
It's like the city invested in like real Tonka truck sandbox toys.
And it's usually the families that actually just like drop them off and like leave them there for the community. So that also just kind of shows you how giving and kind of tight-knit this community is. Everyone just kind of like, you know, adds a little old toy truck to the sandbox.
Our little guy would like march right in there and have the time of his life.
There's probably 30 of them at least in there in this giant sandbox. The city invests a lot of their tax dollars into their school systems, and it really shows. Their public schools have all been rebuilt. They're all state-of-the-art facilities. Their high school is just amazing. My hairdresser over in Lake Oswego was just telling me about it yesterday and how her kids aren't in it, but she loves going to sports games and the basketball games and stuff at the high school because of how nice it is.
Speaking of kids, I just found a sticker on my purse. So one of the things about living in a community that has really great schools is it tends to draw a lot of families, people that are in the same stage of life. And so that really adds to the family-friendly atmosphere here in Sherwood. A lot of people who appreciate the same amenities. There's a great old town in Sherwood, and you can go downtown, you can have that experience of being down at the Saturday Farmers Market. They have summer concerts in the park on Wednesday nights that draw a lot of families. They have festivals here, so they have a Robin Hood Festival. There's a wine festival in 2 weeks in the beginning of August that includes a big wine dinner and a festival where you can come and do a lot of wine tasting.
That's definitely a pro in my book.
And this is, just to give you a perspective, an agricultural town. So we are in wine country here in Sherwood, and that's not the only agricultural industry here. We're also really close to a lot of you-pick farms, which means you go and you pick your own berries, you pick out your pumpkins, there's Christmas tree farms here. And so those kinds of activities are a huge draw for families. Our kids love to go into the berry fields and pick berries and apple orchards, and it's really one of my favorite things about living here in Oregon.
Yeah, me too. In the 3 years we've been here, every year, every season, we do one of those things. We're out at the farms picking berries or apples.
Yeah, we had our first fresh raspberries of the season actually last weekend at a little farm near us.
Yeah.
So with all of those amenities, I feel like a big question is, what's the housing like? What's the housing market like here in Sherwood?
I'm going to classify this as a con because the median home price here in Sherwood is higher than the median Portland home price, but not by much. And for what you get for it, if you're looking for that small town, really for $600,000, you can get into a relatively new home that's been updated, doesn't need a lot of things, it's move-in ready, 3-bed, 2.5 bath, 1,600 to 1,800 square feet. Like one of these homes in this neighborhood that we're walking right now in Woodhaven. This is one of my favorite neighborhoods. So I'm gonna call this a con and a pro because depending on your price point, if you're moving from a higher cost city, this is probably a lot less expensive than where you're moving from. So in that case, it's gonna be a pro, but it is more expensive than the average Portland home. But in my opinion, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck if you can take advantage of everything this town has to offer.
So I think people are seeing the value here because you're getting a lot more reach outs. You've had a lot of clients recently where you've been out here looking at homes, taking people to see homes. People see the value of it. So even though, like you said, it's a bit more expensive, that's how I always think about housing is, what are you getting for your money?
That's right.
What is the value? And I think for a lot of people coming from more expensive cities on the West Coast, that $600K price point in a tight-knit community with newer homes and great schools is a good value.
Absolutely, 100% in my book. And I mean, if you just look around, I mean, it's so quiet here. It is a Tuesday afternoon, but it's just so quiet. So if you work from home, this could be a great option for you. It's got amazing schools. The cost of living here is going to be a little lower. You're not going to spend a ton on utilities because of the seasons are moderate. You are going to need air conditioning in the summertime. So that is something just to be aware of. These newer homes that have been built in the 90s and newer, most of them all have central air. But if you get something that's older, some of those older homes don't have central air. So if it has central heating, you can always add it.
Just to orient you in terms of where we are southwest of Portland. So we're about 30 minutes with no traffic into Portland itself. And I think if I were considering Sherwood, it would be that I was thinking I was going to spend the majority of my time here. I wasn't someone who was going to want to be heading into Portland regularly to be taking advantage of the things in the city, like, the museums and the shopping and the more city urban environment. I would really be thinking about Sherwood if this is where I wanted to plant myself and spend most of my time.
Yeah, if I had a young family, which I do, Sherwood would be high up on my list for me personally. Now that also what you mentioned about being a little further from Portland, I'm gonna go ahead and throw that in there. That's gonna be a con. Now, some of you might find that attractive, and that's what gets you it being that smaller town. It's quiet, you're right in the middle of vineyards and farmland, and you literally are in the middle of the country here. But I'm gonna go ahead and say that is a con, that you are further from downtown Portland.
You're about as far as possible as you could be from the Portland International Airport out here.
Yeah.
Which, if you're someone that needs to travel a lot or likes to travel a lot, this is a little bit longer of a haul for you.
Right.
And I would also say this is a very residential neighborhood that we're in. This is not walkable to things like cafes and restaurants and shops. You would need to be really living right in Old Town Sherwood to have that walkable experience, to be able to walk to the library, walk to a wine bar.
Yeah, that's right. Another pro is local shopping. If you like to shop local, Sherwood has a lot of locally owned stores. So if you like to shop local, that's definitely a pro. You're gonna get a lot of those stores scattered throughout Sherwood, and especially in Old Town historic Sherwood.
Then we're also, again, right here in wine country, and then we're about, would you say 75 minutes from the beach, about 20 minutes from McMinnville, which is really the heart of wine country. That's a wine country town, also a college town. And I feel like Sherwood is a little bit of Midwest Americana in Oregon.
Absolutely. And that's why it makes a lot of those lists, like, top 50 small towns to live in America and friendliest small town in America. Sherwood really does have all of those things. And hey, anytime a town makes friendliest places to live, you can't go wrong there. Who doesn't want a friendly town to live in?
Let's talk a little bit about weather overall, because here I am in a linen dress and we're talking about air conditioning. But this is July 26th. We're having a heat wave this week. Summers in the Pacific Northwest cannot be beat. It's beautiful. The sky is so blue. There's some hydrangeas blooming over here. But we pay for those summers with a long, rainy fall, winter, spring season.
Yes. So bring your rain jackets, but you know what? It's not as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. You just got to get one of those rain jackets with a little hood that flips up, and
you just have to be prepared, and you have to be willing to get out anyway with the kids for a walk where they can stomp in mud puddles, and it doesn't bother them one bit to be out in the rain.
Yeah, that's right. You just got to have the attitude of, hey, we're going to get out, we're going to enjoy it. But it is a mild seasons, so that is definitely the pros, and I think why Portland has seen a big growth and a lot of people moving here, because it doesn't get a lot of ice, it doesn't get a lot of snow. And you know what? It's not a very hot and humid place. Today, it's gonna be 100 degrees, but it's not that humid out, if you're gonna compare it to a lot of the South or East Coast.
You'll notice us hanging out under these trees as we chat with you, because under the shade, it's very bearable.
Oh yeah, no, it's nice.
And I think, we're sort of categorizing weather as a con here, but for me, there's something about the changes in the seasons that I've really learned to love here in Oregon. The leaves changing in the fall is so beautiful and gives you a real sense of the change, the shift into autumn, the move into the holidays, and so that crisp leaves changing over Halloween and then moving into the Christmas season. And then in the spring, you get this beautiful blooming, so many flowers and the fragrance and the fresh air I do love having 4 seasons.
I do too, and I'm a little heat adverse, so I love being somewhere where it's usually a little bit cooler. So it's a perfect fit for me, and that's one of the reasons
We moved here.
That's one of the reasons I voted for moving here versus somewhere, say, in the Midwest, or even we were thinking about Austin. And you know what? It gets really, really hot in Austin, and it's gotten a lot more crowded. You know, I used to go down to Austin quite a bit, like 20 years ago when I was in college, but now it's real. The urban sprawl there is a real thing, and the cost of living is way higher than it is here in Portland.
Yeah, I think we've acclimated so much to the slower pace of life in the Portland metro here that I don't even know if we notice it as much, but we had some friends visiting last week from the Los Angeles area, and you could just tell how much they appreciated the calm, the ease.
Yeah.
You know, they were heading into downtown Lake Oswego to go out to lunch and things like that. And they said they're just not doing that as much in LA with small kids because it's stressful with the traffic and the congestion and the high density. And so if you're looking for something where it's a slower pace of life, it's calmer, it's quieter, it's more grounded, these smaller towns outside of Portland are really a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You know, those were all reasons that we moved here, and I kind of forget those a little bit, what that feeling is like. So yeah, when they were talking about that, and one of the main things that struck me that I had forgotten about is they said, hey, we have time to do like one activity, one thing. You know, they live in Los Angeles. Just because of the traffic, you know, it's like an hour or an hour and a half just to go to the beach, and then an hour and a half to come back. And when you have little kids, it's like, they're like, we just don't do it hardly that often because, you know what, the kids can't last more than like 10-15 minutes in the car, and then they're kicking and screaming, and it's just not worth it. It's not fun.
And in that one day that we were talking about that, I think you took them for a hike in the morning on those trails near our house. They went out to lunch in town, and then we had a barbecue on the river that evening and had the kids play on the beach. So you really can fit in a lot more with less stress.
Absolutely. And all those things are within 5 minutes from our house. So you also have time to go home, and the kids can take a nap in between all those things. And the same is true for here in Sherwood. You know, it's that same small town, not only feel, but, you know, location. It has all those amenities are right here.
Yeah. I think a town like this, the only way to really know if it's gonna feel right to you and be a good fit is to come out for a visit. And so reach out to Aaron. You can talk about Sherwood. You can talk about some comparable small towns, suburbs, and parts of Portland, and share, like, what are you looking for? What are your family's needs? What are your interests? What do you like to do? And see which pocket of town makes sense for you, and then come out and see some homes.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a local real estate agent, so if you have any questions, my information is right down there in the description area. Reach out to me if you want more information on some of these neighborhoods. I'd be happy to connect with you. You can set up a Zoom call. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this pros and cons of Sherwood, Oregon. Learned a little something to take away from it, and if it's a good fit for you, give us a call. All right, guys, see you on the next one.